Look at this house on Rocky Point Road in Tequesta, Florida. Nothing about it looks unusual. A quiet cul-de-sac lined with palm trees, a driveway, a garage door that had probably been left open 100 nights before without incident. On the night of August 15, 2016, sheriff's deputies pulled up to this house expecting some version of a domestic call gone wrong. What they found instead did not match anything they had trained for. A man was on top of another man in the driveway, and he was biting his face. Deputies would later describe two distinct wounds, one at the left earlobe, one above the left temple. The man underneath was 59-year-old landscaper John Stevens. He had no pulse when a crime scene technician checked him moments later. The man on top of him did not respond to commands. He did not respond to pain in any way deputies recognized. It took several officers, repeated jolts from a stun gun, and a police dog biting into him before they were able to pull him off. They chose not to shoot him, even as the struggle continued, because Stevens was too close. A bullet meant for the attacker could just as easily have killed the man they were trying to save. One deputy who responded that night wrote in his report that the attacker kept repeating that he needed help, that he had eaten something bad. Another, describing what he saw on the man's face in the middle of the struggle, used blunter language. He said he looked like the devil. The man's name was Austin Harrouff. He was 20 years old. Inside the house, deputies found a second victim. Michelle Mishkin, 53, was also dead, beaten and stabbed along with her husband. A neighbor who had come outside to help had also been attacked and survived. A knife, a corkscrew, and a pair of scissors were recovered at the scene, weapons of opportunity rather than anything brought to the house in advance. That is the crime as it exists in the physical world. 2 people are dead, a third is injured. A young man is restrained by force after being found in a position no one on scene had a framework for. Everything up to this point is documented, photographed, and undisputed. What happened inside Austin Harrouff's mind that night is where the case stops being straightforward. Investigators initially looked for the explanation many people expected, but the tests would not give them the answer they were looking for. To understand why, it helps to go back a few hours to a restaurant a few miles from Rocky Point Road, where Harrouff had been having dinner with his father, a dentist named Wade Harrouff. Austin was a former high school wrestler and football player, a bodybuilder studying exercise science at Florida State University. Father and son argued that night. It was not the kind of argument that makes headlines. Austin got up and walked out. He kept walking for miles, well past the direction of his father's house. At some point during that walk, he began removing his clothes. By the time he reached the Stevens property, he was almost naked. That walk matters because it is the narrow bridge between two completely different versions of Austin Harrouff. On one side is the person his family recognized, a college student, an athlete, a son arguing with his father at dinner. On the other side is the person deputies found on Rocky Point Road, almost naked, covered in violence, and impossible to pull away from a dying man. The distance between those two versions was only a few miles, but psychologically, it was a collapse no one around him seemed able to predict in time. Months later, from a hospital bed, Harrouff gave one of the only public accounts of what he said he remembered from that night. The interview was conducted by Phil McGraw over a webcam while Harrouff was still recovering and still under guard. His defense attorneys later objected to the circumstances, arguing that he was vulnerable, in custody, and filmed without their knowledge. The recording would eventually become public through Florida's records process. But whatever dispute surrounded how the interview was made, what Harrouff said inside, it became one of the strangest parts of the case. In that interview, Harrouff said that somewhere during his walk that night, a dark figure appeared to him. He gave it a name, Daniel. He said he could not see Daniel clearly. He said he could hear him. He described a fear unlike anything he had felt before, and running, not toward any destination, just away from whatever was following him. He said his only thought was to find someone who could tell him where he was. He said he did not remember taking off his clothes, only that he now understood it must have looked strange to anyone who saw him. He said he remembered arriving somewhere and encountering a woman who screamed. After that, he said, it becomes a blur. He does not remember what she said to him, only that he was being yelled at. He does not remember picking up a weapon, though one was later found with him. He does not remember why 2 people died that night. If I knew, he said, I would tell you. He described the memory of the attack itself as distorted rather than absent, something that happened without him being fully present inside it. When asked whether he believed he was mentally ill, he said he supposed he was. He cried during parts of the interview and apologized directly to the families of John Stevens and Michelle Mishcon, saying it felt like a nightmare he could not wake from. None of that explains who Daniel was supposed to be. This is the detail the episode keeps circling back to, because it is the detail that resists explanation from either direction. If Harrouff had been under the influence of a drug known to cause exactly this kind of break with reality, the case would have an answer. Investigators tested for that possibility directly. Given the nature of the attack, given a prior case in Miami involving another man and a stranger's face, investigators tested for synthetic stimulants like flakka and for bath salts. They tested for steroids as well, given his size and his training regimen. All of it came back clean. Whatever was happening inside Austin Harrouff on August 15, 2016, it was not something a toxicology screen could identify. That absence is what keeps this case from settling into a familiar shape. There was no substance found in his system to point to as a trigger. There was no criminal history. There was no clear public record of a psychiatric diagnosis before that night that explained a break this severe, arriving this suddenly, complete with a name and a voice. His family had noticed something in the weeks leading up to the killings, though at the time, none of it seemed to add up to anything close to what followed. His mother later told police that Austin had begun saying he had superpowers, that he had been sent to help people. She said he moved his bed into the garage because he believed there were demons somewhere inside the house. Hours before he walked out of that restaurant, she had stopped him from drinking cooking oil directly from the bottle. Later that same night, she found him eating a bowl of cooking oil mixed with cheese. None of this was public at the time of the attack. It surfaced afterward, as investigators and doctors tried to reconstruct what state of mind had walked into that garage. There is one more detail that has never been fully explained. After the attack, before deputies arrived, Harrouff drank something he found in the garage. Whatever it was, it severely burned his esophagus. He would not say what it was. He denied it was the same cooking oil his mother had described. What he drank that night has never been identified in any report, so the case sits with two accounts running side by side that never quite meet. In one account, a stranger walked into a garage, uninvited and almost naked, and two innocent people died at his hands within minutes. In the other account, offered later by the man responsible, a young man who had never shown signs of violence was being chased through the dark by something with a voice and a name, and stumbled, terrified, into what he may not have understood was another family's home. To John Stevens and Michelle Mishcon, whatever happened in their garage that night was the last thing that happened to them in this life, done by someone who had never met them and had no reason to want them dead. Whatever Austin Harrouff believed he was experiencing does not change what was done to them. That has to be said plainly, and it has to stay true throughout everything else this episode raises. But the legal system, when it eventually reached its conclusion, did not treat this as a simple case of a violent man committing a violent act. In 2022, a judge accepted a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity on 2 counts of first-degree murder and related charges. Harrouff was not convicted of murder in the way that word usually gets used in true crime coverage. He was found, through a legal and psychiatric process that took years, to have been in a state at the time of the killings that met the threshold for criminal insanity. He was committed to a secure mental health facility, where he remains unless doctors and a judge determine he is no longer a danger. That outcome does not resolve the central question of this case. It only confirms that the question was serious enough for a court to take it seriously. What we know is this: 2 people died in their own garage on an ordinary night. The man responsible was found on top of one of them in a struggle so severe it took multiple deputies, a stun gun, and a police dog to end it. His blood tested clean of every substance investigators considered likely to explain what happened. What was reported, through his own account and through his family's, is a story of a young man who believed, in the days and hours before the attack, that demons were present in his home, that he had been given some kind of purpose, and that on the night of the killings, he was being pursued by a dark figure, with a voice he could hear, but a shape he could not fully see. What remains unexplained is the space between those 2 accounts. No drug has ever been identified to account for what he described. No prior diagnosis accounts for a delusion arriving with that much detail, that quickly, on a walk home from an ordinary dinner. What he drank in that garage afterward, badly enough to damage his own throat, has never been named. Somewhere on a dark road outside Tequesta, Florida, in the space of a single walk, an argument over dinner became something else entirely for Austin Harrouff. Whether the courts or his doctors or his own memory will ever be able to say exactly what that was is still an open question. The court answered the legal question. It did not answer what happened during that walk. What is certain is that two people who had no part in whatever was happening inside his mind that night did not survive being caught inside it.